वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. In 7 sessions, we covered the grand introduction by Adi Shankaracharya called Avataranika Bhashya and the first chapter consisting of 47 verses. In this session now, which is the 8th, we are going to enter Chapter 2. As we have said a number of times, it is in Chapter 2 that the actual spiritual instruction of Bhagavan Sri Krishna begins. However, we will not be entering that portion in this session, for before Sri Krishna comes out with the Vedanta teachings, with those teachings that lift Arjuna to a great height of an entirely new vision of life, Sri Krishna speaks 2 verses, and there are some verses in the mouth of Sanjaya and a few in the mouth of Arjuna himself. In other words, in the first 10 verses, in the second chapter also, as we shall see presently, there is a build-up of the stage. The stage is prepared for Sri Krishna to actually deliver his Adhyatma discourse. Without any other formality, we enter Chapter 2 now. As we call it, it is Sankhya Yoga. The last verse of first chapter said, Arjunaha Rathopaste Upavishat. He just sat on the front portion of the chariot, leaving aside the bow and his arrows. And it also said he was Shoka Samvigna Manasaha. He was somebody whose mind was deeply in sorrow. Picking up from there, we now have the Sankhya Yoga, Chapter 2, starting. I must clarify right now that though it is called Sankhya Yoga, it is not the Sankhya Yoga of or Sankhya Darshana of Kapila Muni, one of the 6 Astika Darshanas in Indian philosophy, where the major difference is Kapila Muni talks about countless souls and they are eternally separate. Some souls may get liberated, other souls are yet to be liberated. Number one, the souls are many in the Sankhya Darshana, one of the 6 darshanas of Indian schools of thought. And number two, Prakriti and all these Purushas, the souls, are eternally present, they are eternally separate. Even after, let us say hypothetically, all the souls get liberated, Prakriti will be hanging in there, to use a slang expression. Prakriti never gets erased or negated or made non-existent. Prakriti in the Sankhya Darshana, one of the 6 schools of thought, at the most goes into Laya or Pralaya only to rise again and appear as Srishti. So that Sankhya Darshana of 6 schools of thought is different from our Sankhya Darshana here, Sankhya Yoga here. Actually, at this point itself, I must clarify that this Sankhya Yoga of Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita is the same as the teachings of Kapila Muni of Srimad Bhagavatam. This can confuse many people. There is one Kapila Muni who gave Sankhya Darshana one of the six schools of thought. You know, the six schools of thought are the Shad means six. The Shad Darshanas are Nyaya and Vaisheshika, Sankhya and Yoga, Patanjali's Yoga, and Purva Mimamsa, that is the Veda Purva, where Jaimini Sutras are the main body of explanatory notes, and Vedanta, which is technically called Uttara Mimamsa, is the sixth of the Shad Darshanas. So, among the Shad Darshanas, Sankhya is one and Uttara Mimamsa or Vedanta is another. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Mahavishnu appears as yet another Kapila Muni and he gives a beautiful discourse. He gives a wonderful spiritual instruction to his own mother Devahuti, and that is pure Vedanta only. Therefore, let me summarize this important clarification. Among the six schools of thought, there is a Sankhya Darshana. The main exponent of it was a certain scholar called Kapila Muni. And then in the other camp, we have Sankhya Yoga of Bhagavad Gita and the Sankhya Darshana given by Vishnu's avatara Kapila Muni in Bhagavatam. Both of them are Vedanta, non-dual, Advaita Vedanta, as our tradition goes. The first one among the six, is not something that tallies with any of the three Vedanta darshanas. It doesn't go with Dvaita Darshana of Srimad Madhvacharya. It doesn't go with Vishishtadvaita of Sri Ramanujacharya, nor does it go with Adi Shankara's Advaita Darshana. One among the six schools, please keep aside. However, we must give credit to that. The principles and concepts of that Sankhya Darshana, one among the six, are adopted, are taken in by Uttaramimamsa, but then it is taken further. Even Shankaracharya uses many concepts of Sankhya Darshana, but then takes the whole philosophy to a greater height and arrives at Advaita Darshana. So you may wonder why it is called Sankhya Yoga at all. You see, Sankhya is number. Sankhya is where you count, and in a sense, arriving at the highest wisdom also involves a certain counting, a certain calculation, a certain systematic thought process where you dismiss one by one all that you are not and remain as what you truly are. Therefore, Sankhyayate Jnayate Anena iti Sankhyam. There is a process involved here also where one by one the false is put aside and the student remains finally with the purest truth. So there is what is called an etymology. Etymology is a process where a word is derived. So the word Sankhya is derived in a way to fit well with Vedanta Darshana also. Over there, one among the six darshanas, based on the same etymology, it is about counting so many principles, so many components which do not get negated, which remain separate forever, etc. So, coming back to the Gita Sankhya Yoga, the second chapter opens with the words of Sanjaya. As we remember well, the first chapter opened with the words of Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra uvacha dharmakshetre kurukshetre samaveta yutsavaha mamakaha pandavaschaiva kimakurvata Sanjaya. Here, second chapter opens with Sanjaya speaking. I will read the first four verses. Those of you who have your book ready may also read at the same time. Sanjaya uvacha tam tatha कृपयाविष्टम् अश्रुपूर्णाकुलेक्षणम् विषीदन्तमिदं वाक्यम् उवाच मधुसूदनः श्रीभगवानुवाच कुतस्त्वाकश्मलमिदं विषमे समुपस्थितम् अनार्यजुष्टमस्वर्ग्यम् अकीर्तिकरमर्जुन क्लैब्यं मास्मगमः पार्थ नैतत्त्वय्युपपद्यते क्षुद्रं हृदय दौर्बल्यम् त्यक्त्वोत्तिष्ठ परन्तप अर्जुन उवाच कथं भीष्ममहं सङ्ख्ये द्रोणं च मधुसूदन इषुभिः प्रतियोत्स्यामि पूजार्हौ अरिसूदन. We have in these four verses a little by Sanjaya, a little by Sri Krishna, and a little by Arjuna too. The first verse is simple reporting by Sanjaya. Having said in this way, Arjuna sat down, that was reported before. Now, tam Madhusudanaha uvacha. Madhu, it seems, was the name of another demon whom Sri Krishna had finished. So he got the name Madhusudana. These days, many of us prefer symbolic meanings for our Puranas, our Itihasas, our religious background is so ancient. Today, in the 21st century, most of us, the Hindus, are not sure how much of it actually happened and how much of it was liberty of the authors who wrote all these great works. Traditionally, we believe that Rama, Krishna, and all those avatars actually took place. And some of us who have a certain scientific background again believe that essentially all of them came on this earth, but the scriptures then took the liberty to add a lot of extra details which might not be so historical. Then there are some who are excessively exposed to science, and more than exposure to science, there are some who have very poor exposure to Indian heritage. They are Hindus, but they know so little of Hinduism. They are very qualified sometimes, engineers and doctors and chartered accountants, or PhD in some subject. That way they are very qualified. But they have very poor exposure from childhood onwards to Hindu Dharma. Just a little regular stuff, going to temples and sitting down as the priests do some ritual and so on. And we often come across some such people who really are uncomfortable with the story of Rama, Krishna, and so on. They don't want to think much about the story, but they love the story otherwise, and they take everything as symbolic. We'll not go more into that topic at this moment. I felt tempted to raise that because some who may not want to hear that Sri Krishna killed this demon, destroyed that demon, slaughtered yet another troublemaker over there, and so on, they prefer to take Madhu as the symbol of ego. Madhu means sweet, honey, right? Madhu is honey. And for every one of us, our own sense of who we are is very sweet. We are very attached to it. So, our egoism, which is a trouble to everybody else, is very dear to us. And therefore, perhaps it is represented by Madhu. Madhusudanaha, therefore, means the divine truth, knowing which our ego gets finished. Where the ego ends, the pure self. In the Advaita Vedanta, the Shuddha Atma, Asamsari Atma, the Atma that has no birth and death, that shines forth. That true self is the very foundation, it is the repository of pure love, compassion, and all other divine qualities. So, Sanjaya reports Madhusudanaha, a name of Sri Krishna, Idam Vakyam Uvacha, spoke these words to Arjuna, and Arjuna is once more described as Vishidantam, a present participle. You see, Vishidati means one is crying, one is feeling so sorrowful. Vishada is the noun. The first chapter was titled Arjuna Vishada Yoga. So Vishidantam is to that Arjuna who was crying, who was so sad, Madhusudana said. Arjuna was so sad that the verse itself describes his ikshana. Ikshana are the eyes. Ikshana were akula, were so troubled and their vision had been blurred. Why? Ashrupurna. Ashrupurna akula ikshanam Arjunam. And lastly, psychologically, Arjuna was overpowered, overwhelmed by a sense of self-pity. Kripaya avishtam. Avesha is when something surrounds you, something envelops you. Avesha, something gets into you and fills you. And Arjuna was filled with tremendous sense of, oh, where have I come? What a pity that I am in this kind of situation. Kripaya avishtam, ashrupurna akula ikshanam, vishidantam. Arjunam is implied. The pronoun tam is used. To him, meaning to Arjuna, Madhusudana spoke. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. Lord, Bhagavan, meaning Bhaga means various kinds of wealth, various kinds of desirable things. He has all the wealth, not only material wealth, but the divine qualities or supernatural powers, etc. All of them are meant by the word Bhaga. Technically, they say there are six categories of Bhaga. So all the six kinds of Bhaga, wealth, are in the Supreme Lord. So he is called the revered Lord. And in two verses, in these first 10, all that Sri Krishna does is to chastise Arjuna, to tease him, to try to shake him, to cause some more turmoil in him, to make him think and to make him beg for a new insight. Sri Krishna says to Arjuna, Kutaha Kashmalamidam. How come this impurity has come in you? Kashmala is impurity. How come this timidity? How come this quality most unbecoming, especially of a warrior? You are a Kshatriya. Kutaha tva kashmalamidam vishame samupastitam. These are hard times where a Kshatriya should come out with even greater valor than usual. Swami Chinmayananda used to say, when challenges face you, you must come out with more resources than before. You must, as though, show hidden talents and skills of yours at the time of being challenged. But in the case of Arjuna, the opposite happens. At this list, when this challenge is staring in his eyes, he becomes nervous. Vishama means challenging time. Sama means when things are all right. Vishama is things are not all right. You better be extremely careful. Vishame idam kashmalam kutaha samupastitam. And this doesn't become noble people. In Sanskrit, the word Arya has been in our literature long before it was used in Europe, and Max Muller created that theory of Aryan invasion. As most of you might know, today a large number of scholars simply dismiss the theory of Aryan invasion. Till a few years ago, 10 or 15 years ago, I did not know that Aryan invasion theory was not around from time immemorial. It was proposed by nobody other than Max Muller just about 150 years ago. As you know, Max Muller and Swami Vivekananda were contemporaries. Maybe Max Muller was a bit older, some little difference. But you know, Max Muller, a great German scholar, who of course did all his work sitting in Oxford, and some of you would know this Max Muller, who wrote volumes called the Sacred Books of the East, and he translated the Vedas, and he did a lot. Vivekananda was full of admiration for Max Muller. We admire him for a lot of his contribution, but as regards certain historical issues, he said the certain race called Aryans in Central Asia attacked India, and then they overpowered, and then he attributed a whole lot of whatever is beautiful in Indian culture to those Aryans who came from somewhere. And the natives apparently did not have anything much to talk of. So this was Max Muller's fabrication. And today, a number of authors like David Frawley, who is also called Vamadeva Shastri, is an American white guy but deeply devoted to Hindu studies. Professor Subhash Kak and many others, they have written books, there are many articles. So the idea that some Aryan race came and conquered India, and otherwise there were Dravidians, and the Dravidians were pushed to the south, maybe some remained in the north, all this was all either a mischievous imagination or innocent imagination, but that is not accepted these days by a number of scholars. But my point here is I am not a historian. I am saying the word Arya here, Arya Jushtam, means what suits or what goes well with the noble people. Anarya Jushtam is something that noble people would never do. So Arya, Anarya, you know, one and the opposite word, has nothing to do with that Aryan race of Central Europe which was proposed by Professor Max Muller. By the way, Max Muller never visited India even once. He never set his foot on the Indian soil. But sitting in Oxford University and being of German origin, he actually was in full of love for India. He gave a lot of tributes, a lot of compliments to Indian culture, Indian civilization, Indian spirituality. But here and there, he pulled the carpet before the feet of Indians, and perhaps all such things happen. Some people guess that he was being funded by certain sources and they perhaps had put some pressure on him. All this is fine, but somewhere please say Christianity is the best religion for modern times. And apparently he wrote at some corner, the Hindu religion is great, but for present times, he wrote a line. The Hinduism is too complicated. Christianity answers the needs of present society. Some such thing he wrote. And his critics believe that he perhaps wrote it under some pressure from funding agencies or whatever. Again, sorry about making some comments from a history perspective. I am no historian. In fact, I'm not concerned also so much, like most Hindus. We are not so much concerned with history. We are in love with our spirituality. Whether Rama and Krishna actually moved around on this earth or not, for most Hindus it makes no difference. They say he answers our prayers. So many saints and sages have had vision of him. So many have talked to him. So many have fed food to him. So many have received guidance from Rama, from Krishna, even in recent times. You know, it is said even living saints like Mata Amritanandamayi, Ammachi, the hugging saint, had visions of Sri Krishna. Even in her childhood, she would go into ecstasy, faint, go into samadhi, faint. She fell down into a river once when she was a young girl, and somehow she was saved by some villagers saying Krishna, Krishna, and so on. Therefore, the Hindu philosophical outlook is a bit strange. They don't care so much for historical, you know, support for many of these characters. Anarya Jushtam, Sri Krishna chastises Arjuna. This is not something that gentlemen do. This is not something that noble people do. Come on. And Akirtikaram, this will bring such bad name to all of you Pandavas, to your whole clan. Aswargyam, rather than taking you to heaven, such acts of an untimely withdrawal from a war will take you to hell. Swarga is heaven, Aswargyam is, by context, that which leads to hell. And beating him further, whipping him up further, Sri Krishna says, don't act like a eunuch. In Sanskrit, you know, in grammar, you have three lingas: Pullinga, masculine, Strilinga, feminine, and Napunsakalinga, neuter. This Napunsakalinga is also called Kleba. Kleba. Kleba means Napunsakalinga. And the abstract noun formed from Kleba is Kleibyam. You know, just like in English, a lot of abstract nouns are formed by adding ness, whiteness, blackness. Black is adjective, blackness is a noun. So kleba is adjective, something is neuter. In South Indian languages, we have masculine, feminine, and neuter. And in Hindi, you know, they have only masculine and feminine. So, as most of you know, generally South Indians who study Hindi have a difficulty remembering whether a table is masculine and feminine. A newspaper, akhbar, is masculine or feminine because there is no neuter in Hindi. Whereas in Kannada or Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, you have, boy is masculine, girl is feminine, And a table or a chair or a newspaper or a fruit or a stone, they are all Napunsakalinga. Anyway, Napunsaka and Kliba are one and the same. Klaibya is being a Napunsaka. So I first said eunuch. Klaibyam masmagamaha. Arjuna, don't act like a person who has lost his masculinity. You don't seem to be a man at this moment. Interestingly, in the 7th chapter, to be precise, the 8th verse, Lord Krishna says, I am Paurusha in men. There's a beautiful verse, Rasohamapsu kaunteya prabhasmi shashi surya yoho punyo gandaha and so on. And there is the word Paurusham Nrishu. So when a man acts like a man with straightforwardness, with fearlessness, being upfront, being transparent, being open, if he has made a mistake, he admits, sorry, I made a mistake. And if he has not made a mistake and people accuse him, he stands up to them and don't tell me I made that mistake. I have done rightly. So some of these are considered as the manly qualities which both men and women have. So Klaibya is being weak, being afraid, looking left and right, and very undesirable. Klaibyam masma gamaha. Masma gamaha. Don't assume or don't come under. There's some grammar about this masma gamaha. Let me not go into it. But briefly, it is not the usual imperative mood. Otherwise it would have been magacha. But it is what is called one of the past tenses, agamaha, is one of the past tenses actually. It's not imperative mood at all, but aorist past it is called. An aorist past with the particle sma and with the negation ma. Ma means don't. Gets the imperative sense. Sometimes that sma is dropped also. Some of you, not many, but maybe among the some nearly 100 people attending this session, I'm sure some 5 or 6 would know the famous verse in Valmiki Ramayana. Ma nishada pratishtam tvam agama shashwati samaha yat krauncha mithunadekam avadhihi kama mohitam. It's a very famous verse. That is the verse that came out spontaneously from the mouth of Valmiki when he saw a hunter killing one of the two birds that were in love. You know, the hunter kills the male bird, and as the male bird falls down on the ground, the female bird is so grief stricken. And early morning, Valmiki going on a morning walk to the river or so, or while returning from the Tamasa river, he sees that and he's furious without his planning. Just a verse comes out of his mouth. Ma nishada pratishtam tvam agamaha. So let me not go more into that. That verse has multiple meanings. Apart from just cursing that hunter, you will never be remembered well for ages to come. People will talk ill of you, O hunter. That's the literal meaning. Manishada Pratishtam Tama Agamaha also gives the meaning of the whole Ramayana. So it's a much commented upon shloka. There also you have this structure. Ma Agamaha. Agamaha by itself is past tense. Somebody, you went. To say you went, you say Agamaha. But with Ma, it becomes don't go or don't get glory. Valmiki curses the hunter. You will not get glory. I curse you that you will not get. So, ma gamaha, masma gamaha, klaibyam masma gamaha. Imperative is saying, asking somebody, sit down, stand up, get me a glass of water, That kind of. So Sri Krishna says, Arjuna, don't come under this effeminate behavior. This doesn't become you. Na eta tvai upapadyate. Somebody else behaving like this would have been acceptable, but not you. And Shudram, this silly, this petty Hridaya Daurbalya, weakness of heart. Shake off this petty weakness of heart and Uttishta, stand up. See, Bhagavad Gita has heights of philosophical excellence. It has a lot of intricacies of the Adhyatma Vidya, but like Upanishads, in the Gita too, at a number of places there are short pieces that would make sense even to elementary school students. Take, for example, this verse. A sixth grade boy, a seventh grade girl in some situation is nervous, lacking in courage, and not doing what needs to be done. Then, such words, these are motivational expressions too. Uttishta Kaunteya or Uttishta Parantapa. Come on, you have all the capacity. Why are you nervous? What makes you think that you cannot do this job? You have actually more talent than many others. But the problem you have is you think you are not up to the job. See, this is how we, you know, make others rise to the occasion. And sometimes we do Atma Sambodhana. We say to ourselves, oh no, I should not think I am not up to it. I think I can. So by believing, invoking something from within ourselves. Parantapa. Parantapa literally means, para means the enemies here. Tapa means scorching, giving a very hard time to them. Arjuna is praised by Sri Krishna as Parantapa. You are somebody at whose sight enemies tremble. Give up this weakness and get up. And upon being teased and really almost scolded by Lord Sri Krishna, Arjuna says, Oh Sri Krishna, I do see your point, but that's what happens to all of us, right? We see a lot of things, but there is a if and but. Sometimes our friends tell us, don't bring these ifs and buts, just do the job. But we would not so easily cooperate. Even when our friends ask us to come on, get going, we say, I would do that, but if it were morning, I would have done, but this is already late evening. So there is only if and but. You know, if, but, and may I don't know what else. So some excuse, some kind of pretext by which we don't rise to the occasion. Arjuna says, Katham Bhishmam Pratiyotsyami. Yudh dhatu is to fight, and its future tense is Yotsyate, and Yotsya Prati, when you add, it becomes Pratiyotsyati. Pratiyotsyami. In English, how will I fight back? By adding prati, it is fighting back. They send their arrows towards me. How do I send arrows towards them? Katham Bhishmam Pratiyotsyami. Katham Dronam cha Pratiyotsyami. Hey Madhusudana. Earlier Sanjay used that name for Sri Krishna. Here Arjuna addresses Sri Krishna. O Madhusudana Sankhye. This is not Sankhya, Sankhya. Sankhya means Yuddha. In this war, how do I hit back Ishubihi with arrows? Professor A.G. Krishna Warrior uses the word shaft for issue. Shaft or arrow. How do I fight back with shafts in war? Bhishma and Drona, who deserve my reverence. And puja or how? Puja Worship, arha means deserving. They deserve to be worshipped. Whenever the word puja comes, please don't hastily take the meaning as the ritualistic worship. Puja in Sanskrit stands for any form of showing reverence. Suppose a guest comes to your place, some function, and you have high regard for him, you stand up and fold your hands, or you say Swagatam, I welcome you. That is also puja. Or in your welcome speech, you give some compliments. Today we have amidst us this guest who has all these accomplishments. So to speak some good words also is puja. Puja is very many acts both on the verbal and action level where you express respect, regard for the other person. So Bhishma and Drona deserve all kinds of expression of love and regard. And how can I send arrows towards them? Further, Guru Nahatva hi mahanubhavan Shreyo bhoktum bhaikshyamapiha loke Hatvartha kamanstu guruni haiva Bhunjiya bhogan rudhira pradigdhan न चैतद्विद्मः कतरन्नो गरीयो यद्वा जयेम यदि वा नो जयेयुः यादेव हत्वा न जिजीविषामः तेव स्थिताः प्रमुखे धार्तराष्ट्राः कार्पण्यदोषोपहतः स्वभावः पृच्छामि त्वां धर्मसम्मूढचेताः यच्छ्रेयस्यात् निश्चितं ब्रूहि तन्मे शिष्यस्तेऽहं शाधि मां त्वां प्रपन्नम्. Let's see these three verses. Suddenly the meter changed, and it is believed that great writers, here it is Vedavyasa who wrote all this, who expressed whatever Sri Krishna had said in poetic meter. So Vedavyasa changes the meter. Meter is how the verses are composed. The lyrics is written. Earlier, all the 47 verses and the earlier 51 verses at one go were all anushtup. 8 syllables in each quarter. 8, 8, 8, 8. And this is Trishtup. You have 11, 11, 11 and 11 syllables. So longer meter. By and large, yes, Bhagavad Gita has only these 2 meters. Out of 700, I have not counted yet. Probably as many as 600 are in Anushtup, about 100 are in Trishtup. So Arjuna argues, Vaishreyaha Bhaikshyam Bhoktum. I regard living on alms. Go to doorsteps and ask, Bhavati Bhiksham Dehi. Beg people for your food. Of course, not in the city of Duryodhana. What he means is live somewhere far away in some unknown village and live on alms. Shreyaha Bhaikshyam Bhoktum and Gurun Ahatva. That is the part to be underlined. Not killing these teachers. Hatva is killing. Ahatva, not killing them. Let's just go away and live on alms. Live on dependence on others, because these are Mahanubhavas. And even though they are Arthakamaha, they seem to be siding with Kaurava, and in the process, they too are just asking for the kingdom, asking for power, asking for wealth, asking for enjoyments. So, literally taken in the ordinary way, Arthakaman is adjective to Gurun. these teachers, though it embarrasses us, these teachers have taken the side of Kauravas and are therefore they are Arthakamas. Artham kamayante iti Arthakamaha. But it is said, Madhusudana Saraswati and Anandagiri Vyakyakara, they have interpreted in a slightly different way. In poetry, such things are possible. Arthakama, they connect it to the word bhogan in the fourth quarter. That is, uh, bhogan, all enjoyments. Of what kind? Artha, of the nature of wealth, kama, of the nature of pleasure. So, enjoyments, enjoyment of wealth, enjoyment of pleasure, and all of them would be Rudhira Pradigda, soaked in blood. If we kill these teachers and then we sit on a throne, in my eyes, the throne has blood of the teachers. If we eat our meal on a silver plate, that food, I would see blood of the gurus in that. Rudhira Pradigda, soaked in blood of these Mahanubhavas. So, Arthakaman, regular translation is these teachers are seeking wealth. Another way is we would be enjoying various enjoyments of the nature of Artha and Kama. So, either way, his main point is killing these teachers, going for all these things is not a good idea. Sri Krishna, I can't understand why you are also, of all people, you are also putting pressure on me. You are also trying to persuade me to fight this highly unrighteous war. And he says, he philosophizes, really speaking, I am at a loss to know what is good. Is it good to go and beg for alms, or is it good to fight the war? Katarat, as the sixth verse says, Katarat. See, in Sanskrit, if the question is about a plural quantity, singular, dual, plural. Singular is one, dual is two, plural is more than two, three and onwards. So if it is more than two, then the question is about which one shall I take of these. You have to use the word katama. Katama means which of the many. But if there are two, then you have to say katara. And the neuter form is katarat. Katarat naha gariyaha. I don't know which of the two is the best for us. One meaning is whether begging alms or going for war. Another is connected with the second line. I don't know whether it is good for us to win or maybe it is good if they win. Sometimes you and I are in such situations where we ourselves feel, I think in a way it's good if we lose. In a way it's good if I fail in this examination. In a way, if it's good if those people refuse to give what I am asking for. You know, like there was a young man who was walking towards the house of a girl whom he had loved, and he was telling his friends in some short story I read long back. I'm so nervous. In a way, I love that girl. In a way, I'm going to ask her father whether he was agreeable for his daughter to marry me. But part of me says, it's best, it's very good if the father just refuses. Because this young man is also nervous about marriage, responsibility, all those things. So human mind oscillates. On one hand, he is walking towards the girl's father's house. On the other, he is hoping that the father would just flatly refuse. So Arjuna is like this, oscillating. I don't know whether it is good for us to win at all. Maybe it's good for us to lose this war. Yadva jayema, yadiva no jayeyu. For yaneva hatva, yan eva. These Bhishma, Drona and others are such. by killing whom we would not want to live. Jijivishamaha. Jivamaha means we live. Jijivishamaha. This is one more what they call desiderative. Sannanta. Jijivishamaha means want to live. So, to do and to want to do. To live and to want to live. We don't want to live if it involves killing these people. And such people, first of all, gurus, acharyas, and then practically, he has become so soft hearted this particular morning. He covers all the Dhartarashtra, all the sons, including the wicked Duryodhana, Dushasana, and others. How can I live if it involves killing these people? And Karpanya. Once more, earlier the word that Sanjaya used was Kripa, the first verse of this chapter. Here it is another word. This is not from Kripa, though it may be related. Kripana. Kripana becomes Karpanya. Again, that means Dainya. Dainya means pitiable. Dainya means when we shrink, when we feel we are no good, we look down at ourselves. We, rather than being filled with self esteem, we come to a point when we think we have become such despicable creatures on the earth. Karpanya dosha, Arjuna says, he has his own psychological analysis. He says to Sri Krishna, my swabhava is to be a brave soldier, but that swabhava has been upahata. Karpanya dosha upahata swabhava. My regular nature is very badly hit, very badly affected by these thoughts that are rising in me. And therefore, Sri Krishna, please understand, don't chastise me like you did. Please understand, when the situation is of this kind, anybody in my position lose, would lose all his intention, all his energy. And what is more, dharma sammuda cheta. Sanskrit is known for very beautiful compounds. These are called compounds, samasa. Dharma sammuda chetaha is as a compound, an adjective, a descriptor to a person whose chetaha, whose mind is sammuda, is confused and deluded with regard to dharma, with regard to what is right. So, to put it in English, it becomes a long phrase. I am someone whose mind is confused with regard to what is dharma. That much is expressed as dharma sammuda chetaha. Dharmam prati sammudam chetaha yasya saha dharma sammuda chetaha. That's called vigraha vakya. Tvam prichami. I ask you, Sri Krishna, this morning, nischitam bruhi. Here, Arjuna, on one hand, is in a deluded state of mind. But sometimes it is at such state of mind only that an inkling of something superb comes along. It appears that Arjuna at this point, on one hand, is so desperate, his thinking almost has stopped. But on the other hand, he realizes that, hey, I am not standing before someone ordinary. I am standing before Sri Krishna, who is much more than a friend or a companion, who is a repository of all wisdom. Therefore, I must now look at him as a disciple. Shishyasteham. See the last line of the shloka, number 7. I am your disciple. Shadhi. Shas means to instruct. And this is imperative mood. Lot lakara. Shadhi. Please instruct me. Please teach me what what is truly good for me. Yat shreyaha syat. Shreyaha is what is good. Yat shreyaha sat nishchitam bruhitan me. Please say it, please spell it out in no uncertain terms. Shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam. In this way, Arjuna confesses his utter inability. Let's read two more verses that leaves the stage to Sri Krishna after that. Nahi prapashyami mamapanudyat yacchokamuccoshanamindriyanam avapya bhuma vasapatna mriddham rajyam suranamapi chadhipatyam. Sanjaya uvacha एवमुक्त्वा हृषीकेशम् गुडाकेशः परन्तपः न योत्स्य इति गोविन्दम् उक्त्वा तूष्णीम् बभूवः. Arjuna's verse 8 is in Trishtup, but Sanjaya's reporting comes back to Anushtup. Arjuna confesses, Nahi prapashyami. I am unable to see whether all this war, all this getting the whole kingdom, bhumau avapya, obtaining it, and rajyam asapatnam. Sapatnam is shatru. Asapatna is a kingdom where no more of any enemy remains. Asapatna, where all the enemies have been put down, have been conquered. Riddham, many of you know the word samriddha. Samriddha means prosperous. Samriddha is actually riddha with sam. Riddha also means prosperous. So, even after getting this prosperous kingdom where no more enemies remain, I don't think that my sorrow will go. I'll continue to burn with regrets, burn with repentance. I'll continue to have this turmoil within me. Yat shokam indriyana muchoshanam. What a figure, what a wonderful expression Arjuna uses. Not just my mind, all my senses are burning because of the psychological turmoil. Mind body connection. When the mind is agitated, the body also has many signs, many symptoms of you know, abnormal behavior. What would take away apanudyat? Apanoda is taking away. What would take away all this turmoil? I am not sure. Especially, I don't think winning this war will be a solution of any kind. Suranam cha adipatyam. Leave alone this kingdom. Even if I get to rule over gods in the heaven, I become Indra, not just on the earth. In the heaven too, I am the king. I don't think this sorrow, this repentance, this guilt, this hurt conscience would be restored to normalcy. Therefore, here I am. Please teach me. And Sanjaya reports, Evam Uktva Hrishikesham. So Hrishika is Indriyas and Hrishikesha, Lord Krishna, is a master of his senses. He never has even an iota of a issue of self-control. He is by nature full of control, full of mastery. And another meaning is given. Rishi can mean Hraswa, shortened. Kesha is hair. And because of the war, Sri Krishna had trimmed his hair and tied them up in such a way. So, someone whose hair were made short for the occasion. That's the second meaning. Same way, Gudakesha also, we said Gudaka means Nidra and Gudaka plus Isha. One who had conquered sleep, that can be taken literally. It can also be symbolic of someone who is adept, who is very skilled in keeping away tamasic tendencies. Because even if you are awake sometime, if your mind is overpowered by tamasic tendencies, like you are awake, people look at you as being full of bright face and whatnot. Let's say you go to a temple and you are standing there before God's idol. Anybody who looks at you thinks, wow, how devoted he is. But imagine, even as you are standing, in your mind there are some thoughts. I hope I'll get some good prasad today. Last time my friend got laddu and I got only tulsi patta. I hope I'll get a big laddu this time. So if you are about enjoying some prasad, then that is a tamasic thought. Whereas if you stand before God in a temple and appropriate thoughts arise of love of God, thoughts of God's greatness, that is sattvic thought. So Gudaka can mean literal sleep or various tamasic tendencies, tamasic thoughts. Arjuna was known for overcoming them. Parantapaha. In some versions, it can be Parantapa. Then Sanjaya is addressing Dhritarashtra as Parantapa. Already we gave the meaning, somebody who scorches his enemies. But if it is Parantapaha, that is adjective to Arjuna. Arjuna, known as Gudakesha, says this way to Rishikesha Sri Krishna and then emphatically, without mincing words, Na yotsye, yuddham na karishye, I am not going to fight, says Arjuna, and tushni babhuva. Tushni means he becomes silent, not a single word anymore. This is the report of Sanjaya. And from the next verse, we have Lord Krishna coming center stage. The next verse reports that Sri Krishna spoke to this Arjuna with a smile upon his face and so on. So, 11th verse onwards is the actual instruction. 10th verse is saying that Sri Krishna began to speak. You know, Tamuvacha Rashikesha Prahasanniva Bharata. Smiling away, Sri Krishna speaks to Arjuna. And 11th, Ashotya Nanvashochastvam. So we are going to take up those verses which have a lot for us to learn, for us to contemplate upon. Next class we shall begin that. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so the first question for this particular session, Tuesday evening in US and Wednesday morning in India. Lot of you have said Hari Om and Namaste, Pranam, etc. It's good to write this. That way I also come to know who has attended, who has joined and so on. Because the way this YouTube works is if somebody doesn't put any comment, I would not even know that that person attended. So Srinivasa Rangarajan, 2-2 is the wake-up call that every one of us needs. Yeah, 2-2 is this. Today we began the second chapter, second shloka. Kutastva kashmalamidam. Yes, I agree, Srinivasan. Unless I get a kick, I won't get started. Krishna gave the boot that I need. So true. In fact, I read the other day, we are all like rockets. Unless our bottom is set on fire, we won't take off. So that example of rocket was very good. Rocket is fired. So we have to be, somebody has to set our bottom on fire, then we get up and get going. Sometimes we are like that. Okay. So Srinivasan also has Another comment, second chapter, third verse, Sri Krishna tells Arjuna to stop being a wimp. Good, that's also a nice interpretation. 2-7, is 2-7 a good prayer to recite? Exactly, thank you for saying that. Seventh verse in the second chapter is something that you and I also can use and pray God. Lord, please teach me. Please instruct me. I don't know what I should do in this situation. Please guide me. So, number 7 is a good prayer to recite. This is how we may ask help directly from God. Yeah. Subramanyam. Arjuna elevated Sri Krishna from being a friend to a guru. So one should have a good guru in life to be put back on the right path when one is off track. What is the next best alternative to guru? See, philosophically, you don't need an alternative because the guru is always available. The guru is outside as well as inside. But practically, because your mind may come under the influence of some rajas and tamas, you will not be able to connect to the guru. Then next best alternative, today, thanks to technology, we have audio, video, printed book, everything, the words, the teachings of great masters. Sometimes if we are not open to the teachings, then lives of great masters, certain episodes. It's very funny that even if we have learnt a lot of philosophy, again our mind sometimes goes to such a low level. All we need is some motivational, you know, uh, words. Suddenly you have something from Vivekananda. Yesterday somebody shared with me a saying of Vivekananda. Vivekananda roars. What you need is the armor of renunciation and the sword of wisdom. Armor, kavacham. You need an armor of tyaga and the sword, khadga, of wisdom. What a powerful pair of words. And so, lives as well as teachings. Life and teachings of Ramana Maharshi, life and teachings of Nisargadatta, life and teachings of Vivekananda, like that. You may even pick from wise people from around the world. The best good news is it's like we have so much choices. And today, at the click of a mouse, we have access to great masters, great inspiring sources. Okay. So, Sundarajan, Swamiji, can you please elaborate on what he means by Karpanya dosha? What does Kripana mean in general and in this context for Arjuna or for us? Yeah. See, whenever you and I are filled with two things, one is a certain insight into a noble course of action, and second is we feel up to it. We feel confident. We feel motivated towards it. That is very desirable. Karpanya is the opposite in both respects. Number one, we are not sure what is the course of action. And more than that, number two is more the scenario. More than that, even though we have a certain inkling of what is to be done, we feel not up to it. Not me. I am not fit for it. I am nobody. Maybe somebody else can do it. So, how the word comes is dosha is a defect. So, it's a psychological defect. How the word comes is kripa means pity, compassion. So, you feel compassionate or you pity yourself. Kripa leads to kripana and its abstract noun is karpanya. So, it should suffice to say that karpanya dosha is a state of self pity, looking down at ourselves, feeling not up to the mark, feeling that we lack the qualities needed for a job, in addition to certain lack of clarity about the right thing to do also. That is carpentry, self-pity, diffidence, lack of confidence, low self-esteem, all these come into it. So looks like all the questions have been covered. If I have missed anything, sometimes while scrolling up and down, I might not have seen a question. I request that person to quickly write. Then it will come right at the bottom. I don't have to search going backwards. Perhaps I have not missed. Ah, great. So next class, we shall hear the words of Sri Krishna on the spiritual plane. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Oh, Sundarajan has one more question. In one of his lectures, Swami Vivekananda said, Chapter 2, verse 3 speaks about strength, based on which he finally told us, strength is life, weakness is death. Yeah. In fact, for that verse 3 only, I said it will have an appeal even to elementary school students. Because if some boy or girl is feeling nervous, so verse number 3, Uttishta, arise, don't act like a eunuch and so on. Right. Okay. Jai Shri Krishna.